Saudi Arabia can't hide from a 9/11 victim lawsuit that a judge said last week is going to go forward. I have Farron Cousins with me, editor of the Trial Lawyer magazine. What a great ruling.
Right.
I mean, this judge all the way along the way has been very methodical about this case, and it's going to take place. Give me your take.
Well, you know, this is a case that's been fought for well over a decade at this point, almost coming up on 2 decades. Mm-hmm. And it's still having to work its way through there because, again, there's a lot of intricacies in this case. There's a lot of things that have to be proven just for it to be able to move forward. But what's so significant about this particular ruling is that the day before this judge in the United States ruled this, you had officials over in Turkey that issued an indictment to 20 Saudi nationals for the death or murder of Jamal Khashoggi. So now we're finding out a little bit more about how Khashoggi himself was actually connected to this 9/11 victims case.
Yeah, well, you know, what's interesting about this story to me, and he was talking to the lawyers who are bringing this case. He was giving them, he was kind of a whistleblower, deep throat source of information months before he was murdered by the Saudi royal family. There, I've said it. It was the Saudi royal family. It wasn't these 5 knuckleheads that they've now said were responsible. There was a secret trial that they had, closed doors, right. Secret trial. Interestingly enough, no mention of the royal family being involved. The royal family was a huge part of it. They're the ones that arranged for the Saudis to leave the United States after the 9/11 attack.
Right. And so hopefully as this thing plays out, which is probably going to take years, you know, anybody who's expecting rapid results on this takes time, but it's going to be worth it because we still have to flesh out Saudi Arabia's complete role. We know, you know, most of the hijackers in 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. There is evidence to suggest that Saudi Arabia had been funding them, you know, funding other organizations. And that's part of what Khashoggi wanted to find out. And he was working with these lawyers. He had uncovered evidence of witness intimidation with this particular case. So he was doing what a good journalist does. And Saudi Arabia has essentially a zero tolerance for that. And that's they took the bone saw to him.
What I love about this judge is she says, even on the intimidation, she says, look, I met with the lawyers. They gave me the information in camera. I'm letting this proceed. And the point is, this all rolls right to the royal family. That's where it's going. And you know, the truth is that most bothersome is the U.S. intelligence operatives that have all this information won't share it. They won't share it with the Turkish government. They won't even help with the 9/11 case. Right. Very, very troublesome.
Right. We're having to have trial lawyers come in and weed through the facts, journalists and other governments, because the U.S. government has been less than worthless on this.
A former staffer has accused Joe Biden of sexual assault, and the media is refusing to talk about it. This story makes me so angry, along with so many of the other stories out there right now. But here you have, they're stonewalling this woman who's come forward with Tara Reade. They've stonewalled her since 1993. The media won't touch it, and they're still ignoring Tara Reade, even though the day it occurred, she went and told her brother. She went and told 2 other witnesses. This isn't a made-up story. They're protecting this knucklehead who, you know, the Democrats are so sold on him that they're going to let this ride.
They absolutely are. And at this point, they're actually trying to downplay it and say, OK, well, even if it's true, hasn't Donald Trump been accused of doing this to more women than Joe Biden? It's that we've seen the hashtag the lesser of 2 rapists. And that's actually to mock these corporatists who are trying to make this argument here. And listen, we don't know necessarily, did this happen? Did it not? This needs to be investigated. But we have to put the benefit of the doubt in the woman here, and that's what Joe Biden himself has said in the past.
You know, what's really troubling, too, about it is Time's Up. Time's Up is an organization that's tied into the whole Me Too organization. Time's Up ties directly to Joe Biden through the PR people who run Biden's campaign. All right. She goes to them. Tara Reid goes to Time's Up under the same kind of story everybody else has.
In 2019.
In 2019, this happened to me. They ignore her. They say, we're not going to do, they refuse to do the story. We're not going to do the story because Joe Biden was already going to be the, part of the promised land for the Democrats. Interesting, you do stories on this pretty regularly. What's the response you get from the boneheads out there that are just so Democrat? They're so tied to being their only identity, their only tribal identity is I'm a Democrat, and they stop thinking beyond that. Tell us about some of the responses you've gotten.
We've gotten a lot of emails from people saying, you can't discuss this. I had somebody tell me the other day it was my job to support Joe Biden. That they were emailing me to tell me what my job was allegedly supposed to be. Well, but the truth is here, this is a story. This is a real thing that Joe Biden has not had to address because the media is not asking him about it. He has done countless interviews since this story emerged, and not once has anybody asked him, hey, you have been accused of this. You want to give us your side of the story, maybe?
Let me be specific about that. CNN has a town hall meeting, okay? They can ask him anything they want. They ask him about everything except this after the story had broken. Chuck Todd, MSNBC. Chuck Todd has him on this very personal kind of interview. He's talking about everything about his life, but he never asks him one time about this woman who has made this accusation that is legitimate. There's no, it's not like there were no witnesses, okay? There were no direct witnesses, but that day, she went and talked to people. She told them what happened, and when she tried to push back, she met a total stonewall. Remember, Joe Biden is the guy who crucified Anita Hill. Okay, don't forget that as being part of the story. Anyway, CNN, MSNBC, The Intercept, thank goodness, again, comes to help. Intercept, I think to me right now in journalism, it is the standard. Intercept comes in, ignores CNN, ignores MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CNN. Jimmy Kimmel has Joe Biden on the air. Oh, they're talking about feel-good stuff. They're chumming it up. Yeah. Kimmel, that day the story breaks, everybody knows about it. Kimmel doesn't ask one question about it.
Right, and you also have to give a lot of credit to Katie Halper from the Katie Halper Show. She's the first one to really talk to Tara Reid and air that interview. Crystal Ball over at The Hill, Rising on the Hill, has done it as well. And that's what needs to happen. But these independent media outlets, the non-corporate owned, who do not, engage in this kind of tribalism, they're out there talking about this story. They're telling people, listen, this is a thing that, and nobody's saying, yes, 100%, he definitely did it.
No, but it's real.
But this is an allegation. Joe Biden himself has said we got to believe women. All of his defenders right now have said we got to believe women. And here it is, when it's not politically convenient, let's not believe women.
Here's the list of people, organizations Stonewall. ABC, Stonewall. NBC, Stonewall. CNN, Stonewall. Jimmy Kimmel, specific, Stonewall. Anderson Cooper, Stonewall. Chuck Todd, Stonewall. I could go on forever. These are people that call themselves journalists. They're jokes. And until somebody gives this woman a chance to tell her story, the public can hear it, the joke continues. States are starting to implement quarantines to cut down on out-of-state travelers who are trying to escape quarantines in their hometown. Happened right here in Pensacola, right? Louisiana, man, they're lined up in droves coming to Pensacola. And DeSantis, a little too late, right?
Right. He finally said, okay, we'll put up this checkpoint at the border. If you're coming from Louisiana, 14-day quarantine. If you're flying in from New York and New Jersey, 14-day quarantine. And those are the kinds of things that it seems harsh, I'm sure, to some people, but we have to do this. If you want to flatten that curve, as they say, if you want to make this thing go away and prevent infections, you have to keep people from these high-risk areas from traveling all over the world. That's how the thing spread to begin with. And there's some people out there saying, well, we're losing our freedoms over this. No, you're not losing anything, but if you don't listen to this, if you try to violate these quarantines, you're risking your life, you're risking the life of everybody else you come in contact with.
Okay, so here's part of the Louisiana story. The mayor literally comes out. The mayor comes out, well, nobody told me we shouldn't do Mardi Gras. This was weeks into this. The federal government didn't tell me we shouldn't do this, so we did it anyway. So you have thousands of people infected over there. Now they're trying to get the hell out. They're trying to go everywhere they can. Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, Pensacola, Florida. You cross the bridge here. There's Louisiana lined up to try to get in. And what's so crazy is DeSantis says, well, you know what? We're going to impose a quarantine. It's going to be voluntary. So they're stopped. These people are being stopped on Interstate 10 as they come in. They're being questioned. And then DeSantis says, well, we're letting them go, but we're going to follow up on their voluntary quarantine. He's letting them fly in from New York into the airports, saying, well, we're going to let them voluntarily quarantine. Now, what are the chances of that actually happening? This guy has been behind from the very start. DeSantis has been so behind on the beach issue, where he left the beaches open. Now he's letting this virus just come in by way of tourism, because I suppose he thinks it's good. I suppose good for the economy. Maybe,
right. And on Sunday, they issued this stay-at-home order for Florida, and then you read more into it, you find out, oh, this is only for South Florida, because over the weekend it was announced you had this huge breakout of coronavirus at the Villages. And I'm sure a lot of people who've never even been to Florida know what the Villages is.
Well, explain it.
That is a hot spot. It is a retirement community. It is very right-wing. It is also rather wealthy. Most presidential candidates on the right always go down and they do speeches at the Villages. And now they've got a massive outbreak. So now DeSantis realizes, oh my God, that's my base. Those are my voters. If these people get sick and die off, we're talking about a political shift in this country that can't be undone.
Since the beginning, he's been chasing voters. He's been chasing voters. He's been chasing money for contributors. That's why he didn't close the beaches. He closed the beaches, interestingly enough, in West Palm Beach, but didn't close the beaches anywhere else in Florida until after it was way, way out of control. So, all along the way, he's been behind the power curve, and you just got to wonder, is it just a lack of experience? Indecisiveness? What's your take?
I think a lot of it has to do with inexperience. Indecisiveness is a huge thing, too, because you don't want to, if you're on the right side of this, and the right is downplaying it a little more than, the left at this point. So politics do come into play. You don't want to freak people out. You don't want to be on the opposite side of the president when he was saying this is not a big deal. He's changed his tune now. And so DeSantis was going along with that and always remaining one step
Rhode
behind.
Island, don't you love it? The governor of Rhode Island says, look, we got all these New Yorkers coming to Rhode Island. They're sending people door to door to find out if people are seeking refuge in Rhode Island. So then Cuomo says, you can't do that. That's discriminating against New Yorkers. So she says, fine, I'm going to go door to door and find out about any people who've traveled into Rhode Island to escape hot spots of this virus. That's hands-on. That's hands-on.
Well, and you have to be that way.
Yeah.
And look, it's going to be rough, but if we do this, if we sit tight for 2, 3, 4 weeks, we can knock this thing out and go back to normal. But if we don't, we're looking at months and months of this.
Sharon, thank you for joining me, okay?
Thank you.